I tried to warn Whitney that a chopper for our 500-mile road trip was a bad idea.
Okay. I feel like you're gonna be in a lot of pain.
I'm already in pain.
But she did it anyway. Although long distance on a chopper is pretty brutal, I think for us, by bringing it along, Whitney brought the chopper back from the dead. Before she tells you about how America killed the chopper, here's a bit of her background into riding to see how to us millennials, choppers were seemingly dead.
Thanks, Doodle. I've been deep in the world of motorcycle content since 2020. I've thrown a leg over more bikes than I can count, often way outside my comfort zone, but I've only really done trips on ADV bikes. So I'd be lying if I said I wasn't on edge. This isn't just any kind of bike. It's a test of grit. It's a dive straight into the deep end, all for the thrill of it. So why would somebody with zero chopper experience take a bike like that on a road like Devil's Triangle? There is no reason. I love pain. I love suffering because that's where we grow as human beings, especially on motorcycles.
Now, as for chopper style, this one was not exactly my dream ride, especially for a long road trip.
Choppers came to existence to be light and fast and nimble, and this is none of those things.
I'm more of a classic British engine chopper enthusiast, a fan of those lean, narrow beauties from the late 60s and early 70s. But this was something else.
All right, so let's go back to where it all started. Post-World War II America. Young soldiers came home looking for the same kind of thrill they found overseas, but you couldn't exactly find it at your local soda shop. So these vets got their hands on surplus bikes, mostly old military and police bikes that could be found for cheap at auctions. There were a ton of surplus 45 WLAs from World War II, and you could have them for as low as 50 bucks. 50 bucks, not in today's money, in their money. But those bikes were heavy and honestly not very fast. So what'd they do? They started stripping them down. Fenders, gone. Extra weight, gone. To make them lighter and faster. And this was the birth of the bobber. And the bobber is the chopper's scrappy little brother. Or actually, if we're talking about paternity here, the bobber is technically the chopper's dad. And if the bobber is the chopper's dad, then that means laid-back, rebellious Americana aesthetics were the chopper's mother. In the late 1940s and early 50s, if you wanted more performance from your Harley or your Indian, you had to get creative. There weren't any off-the-shelf performance parts, so builders had to shape and make their own parts. By the 1950s, hot rod culture became central to the Southern California identity, blending performance, style, and an emerging sense of rebellion that became intertwined with the rise of American youth culture. This post-war boom brought a new wave of creativity and a stronger DIY spirit to motorcycle culture. Veterans and young riders started experimenting with even more extreme customizations, pushing way beyond the bobber style. And this is where choppers began to take shape. And unlike bobbers, choppers had extended forks with exaggerated raked out front ends and those high yet laid back handlebars, allegedly for more stable highway riding. The idea was to create something visually striking, unique, sometimes prioritizing personal expression over practicality. This was also when motorcycle clubs and custom culture began to really take off, setting the stage for the chopper's iconic status in the 1960s and 70s. So, what was it like to ride a modern iteration of one today? Well, here's what we thought the moment we came back from Devil's Triangle.
I thought I might die on this trip.
I kind of loved it. Okay.
She loved it. She did love it.
I mean, I like kind of want one. I mean, yes.
I want one too. Not this
it was
one.
Painful. Like, obviously you rode it more than me and my back still hurts from it. And obviously, like, I tried to turn right and I just went straight many times, and that was scary. But I don't know, there's something so
There is a sexy allure of it for sure.
Yeah, and the camaraderie and the community everywhere you go.
And our brother! Are you our brother?
How many road trips have you been on but Harley people don't wave?
We got waved to by every
we got
respect.
It is
from the Harley riders.
It is true. true.
People bow down to the big dog, okay? And I enjoyed that. I could 100% own a chopper for that reason. Just you know,
Just
maybe
for the respect
just for the respect
and
alone.
admiration.
I rode this thing.
We were like, Maria, don't take it in the park.
They were
like, "You don't
very
have to."
gracious. Yeah, I felt no pressure whatsoever.
No.
It was easier than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
It really was.
That surprised me.
Yeah.
It wasn't as uncomfortable as I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Like I thought I would be in more pain, but I'm like, you know what? This is almost doable for a little bit.
Also, big shout out to RiderShare for hooking us up with a $200 credit to make this trip possible. Renting a bike has never been easier. They have an amazing selection and the whole process is pretty straightforward and really convenient. Just browse, book, and ride. And I've gotta say, meeting the owner of this chopper added a whole new level to the riding experience. Hearing his backstory, seeing the other bikes in his garage, it gave the ride a personality of its own, and trust me, that makes a difference. Use my referral link down below to get $25 off your first ride. Also, shout out to Revzilla for hooking us up with some amazing gear before a big road trip. From helmets to jackets to gloves, they made sure we had everything we needed to stay safe and comfortable on the ride. Their selection and support are top notch, so thanks Revzilla. Thanks for keeping us geared up and hitting the road in style.
Experiencing a chopper on the road today gave us a taste of its power, its quirks, and, well, the undeniable cool factor. But to really understand what riding one means, we have to look back to the 1960s.
So the movie Easy Rider was supposed to capture the spirit of freedom, rebellion, and anti-establishment attitude of the 1960s. But the producers, they weren't exactly building bikes, so they needed help. Enter Cliff Voss, an ex-Marine, filmmaker slash activist, and one of the smoothest cats in the motorcycle scene. I mean, just look at this bike! God, that's a good bike. I don't know why. You can't explain it. That's how you know when you see a good bike. There's just something about it that makes you feel funny. But Voss knew exactly who he needed to bring his version to life. Ben Hardy, a legendary bike builder out of South Central LA. This dude was already stretching frames and reimagining bikes long before it was cool. So what did Hardy and Voss end up creating? Oh, just two of the most recognizable motorcycles in film history. You know, Captain America and the Billy Bike. They didn't just slap on some custom paint and call it a day. They built them from the ground up.
Because of the length of the front end and the way it's raked, you have to make a reservation to make a turn.
Creating the look that defined the chopper. Extended forks, the insane rake with the long wheelbase, and the stripped down yet simple raw vibe. Hardy and Voss cemented the esoteric, godlike qualities of the chopper icon everyone knows today. And these weren't just motorcycles. They were the ultimate symbols of freedom, of living life by your own rules, which embodies what was going on in the 1970s. Also, side note, the producers of Easy Rider reached out to Harley Davidson and other manufacturers trying to get a bike that they could chop up. And nobody wanted to help them because they did not want to cement the motorcycle being synonymous with being a rebellion. So that was also a big thing that I thought was pretty cool, was like they were making a movie that embodied the chopper while living what it was like to build a chopper, going out of your way to do something you wanted to do without the help of anybody. They took the chopper from an underground obsession to a worldwide phenomenon. And also, they were not influenced at all by the rising tide of psychedelics in the 60s. No way. Author and owner of the website Vintangent, Paul de Orleans, calls them a magical talisman of freedom. And I honestly couldn't say it any better myself. Choppers became a worldwide phenomenon. You had Australian choppers, you had British choppers, you had Swedish choppers, you had Bosu Zokus, which are easily the coolest chopper in the world, thanks to Japan, always one-upping everybody else in the world. Someday, I swear, I will be an old Japanese man building Bosu Zokus. It's gonna happen. But I digress. Harley Davidson, Honda, and other bike manufacturers, by the late 1970s and the early 80s, they began offering factory-built bikes inspired by the chopper style. These factory customs featured elements traditionally associated with choppers like extended front forks, step seats, and high handlebars. But you know, in a nice little mass-produced packaged bow. The idea was to capture the allure of the chopper without requiring riders to have to be chopper builders, which to me is a quintessential part of the chopper. While purists often see these factory choppers as a diluted version of the real thing, they introduced the chopper to a much wider audience. Over time, this really helped popularize the chopper. So what happened? We had this huge rising tide and big wave of choppers. But then suddenly, what? It's too diluted now to go forward? We gotta go back to the early 2000s. Reality TV boom was in full swing. You had American Idol, you had Big Brother, and you had Survivor. But then in a twist nobody saw coming, choppers roared onto the scene and took over TV. Shows like American Chopper and Bike Build-Off weren't just about bikes, they were about family drama, epic builds, and a whole lot of yelling.
Burn to the ground! That's bull! You know what? Get the f*** out of here!
It was big, loud, and incredibly memeable. Suddenly people who didn't own motorcycles were tuning in every week to see what crazy designs these builders would come up with. And American Chopper didn't just make choppers popular, it made them mainstream. You had companies calling up shops saying, "Hi, will you build us a bike with our logo on it?" Choppers went from counterculture icons to corporate mascots faster than you could say branded content. But then the 2008 recession hits. And just like that, the world changes overnight. Money's tight, credit's harder to come by, and suddenly those high-dollar custom-built choppers aren't exactly on the top of anybody's priority list. People are focused on saving and not splurging on whatever this is. At the same time, reality TV fatigue is hitting. The once massive audiences for American Chopper and other motorcycle shows are tuning out. So without the hype machine of TV to back them up, choppers just aren't in the spotlight like they used to be. But it's not all bad. The decline of mainstream chopper popularity kind of makes way for other trends that were soon going to be coming to light. Riders were starting to focus on far more practical machines, and then, I would say in the 2010s, mid-2010s, you had neo retro coming back, cafe racers and scramblers, and adventure bikes. These were more affordable, except for maybe the adventure bike part, easier to maintain, and perfect for a changing economy and rider, if we're being honest. The custom scene will never die. It's just in a constant state of undulating metamorphosis, shifting away from expensive showpieces to more personal DIY builds that reflect the roots of what a chopper means, or what a chopper stands for, really, the builder and the bike and the relationship between them. After 2008, choppers didn't disappear, they just went back into the underground, where the real enthusiasts kept the spirit alive. No TV cameras, no big budgets. Shout out Hand-Built Show in Austin. Come see it when you go to MotoGP. Just raw passion and personal expression. And maybe that's exactly what choppers needed all along.
I learned on this trip that riding a chopper isn't just about hitting the open road, it's about embracing the challenge, pushing yourself out of that everyday grind and finding something real, raw, and restorative. Plus, in a world that constantly pulls us into routines, endless notifications, and to-do lists, there's nothing quite like taking on a beast of a machine to remind you what it feels like to live. Because out here with the rumble of the road beneath you is where you can truly let go. And for those of us who need it most, that's the best salve there is.
And if you're hooked on bike history as much as we are, then check out Doodle taking on the iconic and legendary Hayabusa. You can click it right over here.